Hello everyone, I hope that you're well. It is almost 2 o'clock on a Sunday, and I spent the morning reading through some of Heidegger's The Origin of the Work of Art. One thing I would say about Heidegger is he is best read when you can read very, very slowly. Heidegger is not really a philosopher to try to rush through because you just can't do that, you know? And that's not enjoyable. It'll be stressful. So, yeah, and I accidentally assigned my students the entirety of this lecture, which is not great because it is like 70 pages. So I'm figuring out which pages that they can skip because I want them to read the most important parts. Anyway, I need to switch though to preparing for Confucianism, studying Confucius. So I thought we could read together because I still haven't started Confucius from the Heart, you, Dan, and I want to read as much of it as I can today because the lecture is tomorrow. I'm going to read the back of this. This is a contemporary book, so I guess it would be considered in the third wave of Confucianism, New Confucianism. And I think it doesn't really focus on the political or economic aspects of Confucianism. The chapters are Why Confucius? And then it has 6 parts. That's the foreword. Part 1 is the way of heaven and earth. Part 2 is the way of the heart and the soul. Part 3 is the way of the world. Part 4 is the way of friendship. Part 5 is the way of ambition. And part 6 is the way of being. So heaven and earth, heart and soul, world, friendship, ambition, and being. I'm going to read the back of this. It says, every one of us has our own goals, but in the hurried, endlessly repeating cycles and rhythms of work, how much time and space do we have to pay attention to our inner heart? Confucius from the Heart unveils the Confucian philosophy that has dominated China's intellectual and spiritual culture for more than 2 millennia. Yu Dan's interpretation of the ancient wisdom of Confucius is accessible to all, ultimately unveiling the immense value of these soothing teachings that have guided a whole culture and withstood the test of time. These are simple truths that speak to each and every one of us and can help us lead better, happier, calmer lives. I think that's really lovely. And one thing I was thinking that's maybe not as related, or maybe it is, last night is the sort of critique of Confucianism that, you know, all of these little rituals that are supposed to sort of be applied in the hours of each day for those who are following Confucius, you know, where you sit at a dinner table, how you drink your tea in the presence of someone else who might be higher in the dynamic, your relational dynamic, how you greet people, etc. That these can be very restrictive. And where is the independence in that, since everyone's supposed to sort of conform to these behaviors of custom. But I was thinking about the elements of play and performance in rituals. Like, for instance, in academia, you know, we put on our regalia for graduation. We call our professors by their last name, Professor something or Doctor something. And, you know, we raise our hands. We do things ritualistically, and, you know, it's a part of, and everyone's doing it, and it's a part of academia. But I think that it's enjoyable. People enjoy when there's social harmony. People enjoy when there's politeness. People enjoy when there's respect. And if you think about the, maybe like more ancient rituals or pagan rituals, even today, where there's costume and there's props and there's decoration and there might be a script that people follow and roles that people take on. You can approach it with this mindset of play. You know, you're performing and you can enjoy the performance. You can be playful about the performance and the ritual, in still like a sincere way, not a derisive way or anything. So I don't know. I mean, I think that having rituals, undertaking ritualistic practices, you can choose how you do it and how you think of it. So, and also, I don't know if I mentioned this in my last video, but the idea of hierarchical relationships versus egalitarian relationships, because Confucius has these 5 different relationships that show hierarchies, right? Like state and citizen, father, son, older brother, younger brother, husband, wife, and so on. I think that, it's realistic because Confucius, like he saw that there are hierarchies in the world. Maybe we wouldn't agree with like all of his hierarchies that, like I just listed, but there are always going to be people in power. When you were trying to organize an entire country, basically, or an entire state, that's a lot of people. And, to be organized and structured, you have to appoint people who will, make the final decisions about how certain things will go. And so if, you are going to have those, or, parents are much older than their children. And when children are very young, parents have to do a lot to direct them and guide them and keep them safe. So when you have these natural hierarchies that are kind of necessary to, family or the state, so then what do we do with that? Because we already have them. They already have to exist. And where they have to exist, we might as well sort of apply a mindset and an ethics and a morality and ritualistic propriety to them so that there's kindness and there's compassion and there's empathy and there's generosity and there's, even though it's asymmetrical, there's still reciprocity. The citizen will give reverence to the leaders, and the leaders then will, take care and not exploit the citizens. So I don't think we always have to see everything about Confucianism as imposing something unnatural. It's just making what already exists a little gentler and better. All right, let's start with this foreword. My book is also, I got the hard copy, and it's so beautiful. And in this book, which is kind of small, so I don't even think it's this long, but it's less than 200 pages. All right, over 2,500 years ago, the students of the thinker and philosopher Confucius wrote down every scrap and scattered fragment of his life and teachings that they could find. These records, based for the most part on classroom notes, were compiled and edited, and afterwards they became what we know as the Analects. I'm going to just underline, because this is a cold reading. I haven't read this before, so I'm going to be like pausing to underline sometimes. Analects simply means a collection of writings. Just over 2,000 years ago, the great Han Dynasty Emperor Wu rejected 100 other philosophical schools in favor of Confucius, effectively making China a Confucian state. 1,000 years ago, the first prime minister of the Song Dynasty, Zhao Pu, boasted that he could rule the known world with just half a book of the Analects. From this, we can see the tremendously important role that Confucius played in the political and social life of ancient times, and the high esteem in which his collected teachings were held by the ancients. But what practical meaning do they have for our society and lives today? When I entrusted the manuscript of my book to the Zonghua Book Company in China at the end of 2006, I was content but also a little troubled. I started my master's degree in the pre-Qin dynasty literature at the age of 21, and I had grown up immersed in books from the Zonghua Book Company, but I would never have dared to dream that one day this elite publishing house might bring out a book of mine. No more than I would have presumed to entertain the hope that I would ever dare to stand up and talk about the Analects of Confucius on television. I think that's really sweet. I have always respected this book rather than fearing it, and my feelings toward it have always been plain, simple, and warm. Oh, that's nice. Once in a small town in North China, famous for its hot springs, I saw something called Ask Sickness Spring. It is said that anybody who takes a comfortable soak in its water will at once understand the source of their illness. People with arthritis will get a tingling feeling in their joints. Those with gastrointestinal problems will experience a hot sensation in their gut, while people with skin complaints will feel a pleasant flush all over their skin as if a layer of skin is being washed away, like the sloughed off skin of a cicada. For me, the wisdom of Confucius is such a spring of warm, living water. With my limited knowledge, even if I truly wanted to write an in-depth analysis of Confucius, I would never ever dare to do such a thing. It would be like sending me off to make a chemical analysis of that hot spring when I am totally unequipped to do so. The only possible role for me is that of someone who has been immersed in this spring myself, testing it with my own body and blood, like the thousands and thousands of people who over the last 200 years and more have steeped themselves in this hot spring and experienced its gifts. The good will see goodness in it, and the wise will see wisdom. Perhaps the value of this classical text is not in rituals and reverence that inspire awe and fear, but in its inclusivity and fluidity, the wisdom in which so many people have immersed themselves down the ages, so that every life and every individual, though perceiving it differently and following different paths, can arrive at last at the same final goal. In China, we say, the truth has never been far away from ordinary people, and here that is certainly the case. I really love the humility of it, because so oftentimes I feel unequipped to do something, but that doesn't mean that I can't approach that something in a way that I am equipped to do. So we just have to find that door. It seems to me that the sages never used obscure classical quotations to imitate people, nor did they load their writing with fancy phrases and difficult words to shut them out. Confucius said, I am thinking of giving up speech. Zigong said hastily, if you did not speak, what would there be for us, your disciples, to transmit? Confucius said calmly and matter-of-factly, what does heaven ever say? Yet there are 4 seasons going round, and there are the 100 things coming into being. What does heaven ever say? The easy truths of this world can enter into people's hearts because they have never been about indoctrination, but rather an inner call to wake up every heart and soul. The reason why these simple truths have survived down the millennia is that they have helped generation after generation of Chinese to stay grounded, to understand the nature and culture that formed them, and to not lose their heads even when confronted by immense social change and almost overwhelming choice. Yeah, I think that's interesting to think about, well, what are the problems or the issues that we face today, and what wisdom do we need to apply as a solution? For Confucius, he was born during the Warring States, and there was chaos. And so he was looking at what the solution could be to that chaos, how to unify the people since all the states were warring against each other and trying to take dominance and eradicate one another. How can we instead find unity and harmony and work together to create something? So, this book is saying that, sometimes there's immense social change and there's almost overwhelming choice. I would say in the US, we have this, like Byung-Chul Han says, this like burnout society, and we do have division in the political arena, I think. And a lot of times there's this feeling of separation. Even when you look on the internet, there's often a lot of snarky comments that we're making towards each other. And why are we doing that? Probably it's a reaction against the stress of life, but how can we, reduce the stress of life? There's a lot of separation between those who are of the top 1% and rich and, spending their time taking vacations and making their businesses more profitable and, trying to up one another by buying luxury items and trying to reject aging by, constant work on their bodies. And then there are many, many, many more who are working paycheck to paycheck, not really even maybe going to the doctor to get checkups or medical help, and maybe they're, not eating as much as they should, and they're just really more on the level of trying to survive and not have any extra costs. I think that a lot of jobs today, even if you have a full-time job, it's just not enough. And you end up having to have maybe a full-time job and a part-time job. I have to do that. And I wouldn't mind having a third part-time job, to add onto it. Just because working more is the way to make yourself financially comfortable for a lot of us. And so, how can the ideas of Eastern philosophy and spirituality, including Confucianism, what can we gain from that? Because I'm really always open to every avenue of wisdom that might seem helpful. And Confucianism specifically, I think, is a good place to look for wisdom, since it's all about social harmony. It's like about widespread tools and techniques that will result in widespread prosperity and consideration for all. Those who benefit from the wisdom of Confucius may experience a moment's heart-stopping enlightenment in which understanding suddenly floods through them. Equally, they may undertake a lifetime of endless study in order to attain understanding. I must really thank the television program Lecture Room for encouraging me to approach Confucius from this angle of Shinda, maybe? It's Xinda, or the E, an understanding that comes from the heart as much as the head. I love that. That's great. I had a really enlightening conversation the other day with one of you, maybe, that are watching or listening, about, going the path of academic intellectualism and egoistic sort of vain spinning into meaningless discussion and dogma, really, and then going another way that is the way of sort of conversational and dialogical bliss, where we're creating like a high vibe space of exchange of thoughts and self-reflection, and going on a journey together where the conversation leaves you feeling refreshed instead of draining your energy. Draining the energy is not what we want. And so how to do that, maybe part of it is to, approach whatever we are approaching from the heart, as well, as much as the head, as you, Dan, just said. Because I was looking up, even after that conversation where, one of you was reiterating that in Buddhism, anatta may not be necessarily translated as no self, but not this self. So, and kind of looking at, okay, so if it's not this self, then that implies that it could be another self. And I was looking at maybe like different Reddit threads, and I think it's called Quora threads, and people can be so dogmatic. It's just really low vibe. People saying, oh no, you're wrong, that's ridiculous, that's BS, like, and I was watching this really beautiful after school video on Taoism, and I think it's called like The Art of Not Trying, and someone in that thread said, you know, people can be wrong about this and you're wrong, and let me tell you why. It's not trying, but it's, you know, yada yada yada, whatever it is. And I'm like, all of that energy, which I am myself guilty of because I saw that in myself as I was in a panic my last class. I mean, I don't know if I was necessarily trying to be dogmatic, but I was sort of responding to dogma and failing to respond to that, and sort of beating myself up for not being able to articulate a response. But it's like being dogmatic, like right, wrong, true, false, this is the way it is, facts. I think that's like sort of not necessarily encapsulating a healthy spirit. Like, it doesn't feel healthy, it doesn't feel good. So how can we be kinder? We can have disagreement, right? But how can we be gentle and kind about, you know, speaking our own truth or our own thoughts or our own opinions? I think that right relationship should be more of a priority than being right. So how can we share even differences of opinions in a space where everyone still feels safe instead of threatened or disheartened or, you know, defeated? Like, we have to care for each other. We have to not only think about ourselves, but we have to think about our impact on others. And I think that's truly an enlightened position to take. But it's not always easy, especially when you find yourself encountering someone who doesn't have that same sort of value of having consideration for others, and thinking about that, not just thinking about, you know, what they think is right and they just want to voice it. Like, the aspect of relationship has to be there. 1,000 hearts will get 1,000 different things out of his work. 10,000 will get 10,000 different things from it, and mine is no more than understanding of one heart among many. I love that. That is so beautiful. Like, I'm really taking to her sort of courageous humility. That is such an inspiration to me that I have to, like, double highlight it and underline it. So, you know, what is the possible role? What is, I don't know. It's so great. All right. When we read it in the course of our lives today and everything suddenly becomes clear to us, Confucius must surely be smiling silently on us from across the centuries. The Song Dynasty Prime Minister Zhao Pu, I have no idea how to say that, ZHAO space PU. Please tell me how to pronounce any Chinese word. Boast is a respect. I feel like I need to, like, take a quick trip to Duolingo to see if they have Chinese and just try to get the sounds down. Is a respectful acknowledgement of Confucius as the source of Chinese traditional culture and thought. I, however, would rather say, with half a book of the Analects, I can enrich myself. Everybody should see it as a warm, gentle, ask sickness spring. That is so cool. I want to go to that spring. Therefore, what we can learn from Confucius today is not the Confucius learning set out by Emperor Wu. It is not the solemn, dignified, ritualized Confucian religion that stands alongside Taoism and Buddhism in China. I'm so excited for the Taoism week in my class. Nor is it the Confucianism of the scholars, full of deep argumentation and fettered by textual research. What we can take away from the Analects of Confucius are the simple truths that every person knows in his or her heart, though they may not let them out through their mouths. In my view, the wisdom of Confucius does not burn your hands nor is it icy cold. Its temperature is just slightly above body heat, for it is a constant that will remain the same throughout the ages. This is so beautiful. And I'm sorry if you can hear a humming in the background. It is September 22, and it is in like the 40s and the 50s today in Colorado Springs. So, yeah, it is cold. You should not think that the wisdom of Confucius is lofty and out of reach, or something that people today can only look up to with reverence. The truths of this world are forever plain and simple, in the same way that the sun rises every day in the east, just as spring is the time for sowing and autumn is the time to harvest. The truths that Confucius gives are always the easiest of truths. They tell us all how we can live the kind of happy life that our spirit means. The wisdom of Confucius can help us to obtain spiritual happiness in the modern world, to get used to the daily routine of our lives, and to find the personal bearings that tell us where we are. We might sometimes think that what we read lacks a rigorous logic. Very many of the sayings concentrate on a single issue. There are few passages of any great length, and almost everything we find is simple and short. We will see how this absence of words is also kind of a teaching. Confucius said, "What does heaven ever say? Yet there are the four seasons going round, and there are the 100 things coming into being. What does heaven ever say?" Confucius said, "See, the heavens are above us, solemn and quiet, never speaking a word, yet the 4 seasons come round and round again, or round again and again, and all of nature increases and multiplies around us. Do the heavens need to speak as well?" This just very much reminds me of Taoism and Wu Wei. What we will find in Confucius is a way of thinking, which is plain, simple, and warm. It is exactly this attitude with which Confucius influenced his students. Confucius had 3,000 students, 72 of whom were men of exceptional wisdom and virtue. Each of these men was a seed, and each in his turn spread the seed of this wisdom and this view of life far and wide. That is why in China we call Confucius a sage. The sages are those people who in their time on this earth are the most practical and capable and possess the most personal magnetism. They bring us conviction and a kind of faith. Such men can only be the product of natural growth, emerging from within our lives, not dropping down from heaven. This sense of natural balanced growth can be found in China's creation myth, which tells of Pan Gu, who separated heaven and earth. This separation was not a sudden change, as in a Western creation myth, where Pan Gu might be, I don't know if I'm saying that right, expected to take a big axe and split them apart with a bang, whereupon a golden light might perhaps shine out in all directions, and the heavens, earth, and everything in them all appear at once. That is not the Chinese style. The type of story that Chinese people are used to is like that described in the San Wu Li Ji, our very early Chinese history, which includes stories of how the world was made. Here we find that creation was a very lengthy process, calm and relaxed and full of anticipation. Oh, this is interesting. Heaven and earth were jumbled together in a cosmic egg for 18,000 years, and Pan Gu lived in the midst of it. The heavens and the earth split apart. The pure yang essence became the heavens. The heavy yin essence was the earth. Pan Gu is between them. 9 changes in one day. A god in the heavens and a sage on the earth. Every day the heavens rose higher by 10 feet. The earth grew thicker by 10 feet, and Pan Gu became 10 feet taller. When he reached 18,000 years of age, the heavens were infinitely high, the earth was infinitely deep, and Pan Gu was infinitely tall. Okay, wow. So heaven and earth were jumbled together for 18,000 years, and creation was sort of like came to a culminating point after 18,000 years. Afterwards, heaven and earth split apart, not in the way that a solid body splits into with a crack, but rather as a gradual separation, of two essences. The light, pure yang essence rose up and became the heavens. The heavy yin essence sank and became the earth. But that was not the end of the separation of heaven and earth. Now the process had only just begun. Notice how Chinese people pay a lot of attention to changes. Look at Pangu, who in between the heavens and the earth went through 9 changes in one day, just like a newborn baby. Tiny, subtle changes were taking place every day. That's so cool. I love creation stories. There is a stage in the changes which the text calls a god in the heavens and a sage on earth. When Pangu had become a wise and powerful being in both realms. For the Chinese, this idea of mastery in both realms is an ideal way of being, one to which we should all aspire. A heaven where idealism can spread its wings and fly freely, with no need to compromise with all the rules and obstacles of the real world, and the ability to keep our feet planted firmly on the ground so that we can make our way in the real world. I think I love that articulation. The mastery, this idea of a mastery in both realms, in 2 realms, that you can sort of balance your idealism and your hope and your faith with also the ability to keep our feet planted firmly on the ground so we can make our way in the real world. So kind of like a balance between the spiritual and the material. All right, I'm actually going to pause. You can stay because it will be only a second for you, but I think I'm going to actually just have some breakfast and then I'll be right back. Hello, I thought I would come on here. My nails are drying, so my nail polish is dry, but that's why I'm trying to not let them touch. Okay, so I thought I would just continue. I had breakfast late, which happens a lot, and it's almost 4. So, yeah, we're on page 14 of this book. See, like how pretty it is. It is like so pretty. Love it. I love hard. I just like, I feel like I'm gonna get all hardcover books for now. They're so great. Okay, let's go back. And so we left off, well, actually, I don't need to say that because it's their video. Okay, let's move on. People who have only ambition and no realism are dreamers, not idealists. Those who have only earth and no sky are plotters, not realists. That's interesting. So you don't want to be a dreamer. You don't want to be a plotter. What's a plotter? I don't know. Maybe I should look up words. Tell me below in the comments below. I'm not going to look it up. Idealism and realism are our heaven and earth. So we have to have like a balance between that, which sounds important, right? Like, you know, just because someone seems like they have their head in the clouds because they are optimistic and hopeful and have faith and are a bit of a romantic does not mean that they don't also have a sense of grounding. So, which a lot of people who are plotters, whatever that is, will, I mean, it doesn't sound good, will, I have to look it up. Where's my phone? Let me just look it up on this. Okay, just 1 second. It's gonna be super fast. I know someone once criticized me for like, why don't you plan? Why don't you just like take 5 minutes? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's me. So it's what I do. Okay, a person who walks doggedly and slowly with heavy steps. Okay, there you go. That didn't take long, did it? Okay, yeah, so people who walk doggedly with heavy steps often tell people, oh, you're just a dreamer, you need to be more practical. Well, you know what? Maybe I'm both. Maybe I'm a romantic and a little bit of a Luddite sometimes, but maybe I'm grounded. I mean, I have a full-time job and a part-time job. I support myself. I can feed myself most weeks of the month. And I'm like independent. There's no one helping me with anything. So I think that, and I'm in the 6th year of my job, so this is personal. Stop telling me to be practical. I am practical enough. People who have only I just read that. But Pangu's changes are still going on, and our story continues. After the heavens and the earth had separated, every day the heavens became higher by 10 feet. The earth gained 10 feet in thickness, and Pangu grew 10 feet every day along with the heavens. In this way, another 18,000 years passed until at last the heavens were infinitely high, the earth was infinitely deep, and Pangu was infinitely tall. In other words, humankind is equal to the heavens and the earth. Heaven, earth, and people are referred to together as the 3 realms, the 3 equally great and important things from which the world is made. I love that. I want to highlight it, but my nails are wet. Confucius viewed the world in this way. Human beings are worthy of respect, and people should respect themselves. I like that because not all of us grew up with that space to respect ourselves. Some of us grew up in a house that we were not attended to. We were dismissed and also manipulated and gaslighted in order to meet the needs of our parents and be caretakers from like day one, like emotionally making one or more parents feel better, not being a problem, repressing our needs. And so respecting yourself is knowing that wherever you are on your path, you are enough. You are enough right now. You don't have to do anything extra to be enough. You are enough. And you should love yourself. Like that's maybe your main goal of life is to learn how to love yourself, to not abandon yourself, to make other people feel comfortable, to take a risk to be in relationships, even if you mess up, even if others see you as a bad person sometimes. But it's to nevertheless take a step forward and be in life and accept all that it has for you, even if you're not perfect, because absolutely no one is perfect. And if someone is acting like they are, they're really not perfect and probably less self-aware than you are. So yeah, so I think that is really lovely. Empowering oneself. Confucius viewed the world in this way. Human beings are, I just said that. When reading the Analects of Confucius, we find that Confucius very seldom spoke harshly or sternly to his students. It's so crazy when people are harsh. I'm like, well, you are not a teacher, because that's not how teachers are supposed to act, right? Teachers want to motivate their students and celebrate their students wherever they are, get them to speak up and ask questions and contribute to the conversation, even if they didn't understand the reading or the assignment, etc. It's to validate the student. That's what the teacher needs to do. And so I just agree with that so much. He usually talked things over with them in a relaxed, easy manner, giving them clues and hints so that they could work things out for themselves. We have all seen teachers scold their students, telling them not to do this or that. That is what happens when a teacher is not all he or she should be. I've definitely seen, it's so strange. I've definitely seen like high top tier professors do that to students. Like a student will make a suggestion about an interpretation and the professor immediately will say no. I'm like, I always try to find the truth in whatever they're saying, or understand like why they might think that and at least validate their intellectual journey. And be in conversation, not just shut them down and say no. Like it just I don't know, it's kind of hilarious as well when professors do that. All right. A truly excellent teacher will be like Confucius, peacefully exchanging views with their students, together getting to the heart of how to make these three realms of heaven, earth, and humanity all prosper and flourish together. I love that. Together getting to the heart. This relaxed, unhurried, assured spirit and modest, respectful attitude is something we should all aspire to. The Analects of Confucius is the embodiment of this ideal. So perfect. And there's a little box. Our ultimate aim is to let the key principles of Confucius enter into our hearts, uniting heaven, earth, and humankind in a perfect whole and giving us infinite strength. I think that's so important, right? Because a lot of times in conflict, some people love conflict and they love drama, and they seem to have never-ending energy to engage in that. But the other half of us gets tired quickly, and it drains our energy. And we need to have more strength. In China today, we often say that for a nation to survive and prosper, heaven must smile on it, the earth must be favorable to it, and its people must be at peace. It is to this harmonious balance that Confucius can lead us today. I honestly just want to read over and closely reflect on the spirit of a good teacher, because that is very personal to me and I totally agree with it. From it, we can derive great strength, a strength that flowed from Confucius's inner heart. It is this strength that Mencius, I don't know if I say his name right, another of China's great philosophers, I've read his work though and love it, who came after Confucius and further developed his ideas described as the noble spirit. Only when the essences of heaven, earth, and everything in between them combine within a person's heart, can they be as powerful as this. So that's really interesting. So the focus is on the heart, and the focus is on heaven, earth, and everything in between. What do we mean by heaven and humanity becoming one? We mean humankind and the natural world in perfect harmony. And that's really what classical Confucianism teaches, that you can basically order the cosmos, like create order and harmony in the cosmos by creating order and harmony in your nation or in the world. And likewise, you can go like down a level and have harmony and order in your family, and then that outpours into the society. And then again, you can have inner harmony and peace and order inside your heart, and then that changes your family. Maybe not all the time. Some families don't want to change and you have to leave them. Yeah. Okay, we are working hard to create a harmonious society, but what is true harmony? It is more than just harmony within a small housing estate, nor is it merely cordial relations between people. It must also include the entire natural world harmoniously and happily living and growing together on this earth. People should feel reverence for the natural world and a willingness to follow its rhythms. And that makes a lot of sense to talk about, like, to incorporate rhythms and harmony into this, because Confucianism is a religion or philosophy. It's a big debate. Different people think different things, how to label it, but it looks to the past. It looks to the ancient past, the ancient, perhaps golden age, and the ancient past thought in themes of like cycles and rhythms. This is a kind of strength. If we learn how to temper the strength and to draw on it, then we will be able to attain a breadth of mind like that of Confucius. Confucius's attitude was extremely placid, yet his inner heart was very serious. This was because he had a deep strength within him, rooted in the strength of his convictions. His student, Zaigang, once asked him what conditions were necessary for a country to be at peace with a stable government. Confucius's reply was very simple. There were only three: enough arms, enough food, and the trust of the common people, which is one thing I think that is lacking from American culture. I think that for a good reason, a lot of Americans do not trust politicians or the government or maybe even the medical institution. There is always a suspicion, I think, of a lack of transparency, which perhaps is born from all of the documentaries that reveal that, oh, these were the secrets that were being kept, by the CIA for 50 years, for 100 years. This is what they really did during various wars. This is who they were really in alignment with. And you're just thinking, okay, well, if that happened then, then what's happening now, right? I mean, I think, and it depends, just like, where your algorithm is leading you. But there's something about like and I just really shouldn't, sometimes I try to give examples from culture and I quickly reveal that I don't know that much about like what's going on. But like Jeffrey Epstein, I guess there's like a list of people who went to his island, and that apparently is like not, like the FBI are not disclosing it. And so I think there's just, and really when you look at or when you watch like American political debates, there's just a lack of honesty. Like you feel a bit gaslighted because their personality is like, no matter really who it is, um, I'm not on either side, honestly. So it's just whoever is on stage is like so puffed up, egoically, mudslinging, and not, I mean, they don't give like the energy of wisdom, right? They're trying to like compete and figure out like who can like win the argument. And that's so dogmatic and that's so different than the vibration of love. I mean, I think an energy of wisdom is on the vibration of love and collaboration, unity consciousness. And it's so crazy. Like I recently watched, there's this one pop star, I don't know why I'm saying like that. Like everybody knows about her, Chapel Roan, and she so often just speaks very frankly. So like she was asked in an interview, how are you doing? And then she was like, not well, because she's like, I don't know. She was saying something about how she's, there are positives to being famous and like you get more money, but you don't have days off and you have fewer days off. And what else did she say? Oh, you miss like important events. And sorry, the hand in my Zoom, like I'm recording, no one else is in this room. But yet like the hand pops up and I'm like, what spirit, but it did it again. like what spirit is with me? I don't know. And so she was just saying, like, she was talking about how, it's so weird and crazy that fans stalk her because she's just like a random girl. And I just love it. I love it. Like, because you get so many celebrities that are just like all smiles and they're like, yes, life is wonderful. I love the movie I was in. Like, everything is great. And I'm like, you just, I mean, like, you don't seem human, and this is not humanity. So, I don't know, like, I really prize authenticity and it takes vulnerability and it takes courage to do that. And I'm not always good at it. Because it is scary because then people might say, well, then you don't belong here, then leave. They might not respond with compassion. They might not respond with empathy, like, oh yeah, I understand how you feel that way. I feel like that too. Like, and they don't appreciate your vulnerability, but you can't, you know, care more about how people are responding. Like, I mean, Chaperone is like breaking ground. So good job. Okay. Goodness, I need to read instead of go off on tangents. Okay. First, the internal apparatus of state must be powerful. It must have enough military power to protect itself. Second, it must have sufficient supplies so its people can be well fed and clothed. Third, the common people must have belief in the nation. I know we're talking about trust. Okay, this student was always full of awkward questions. He said that 3 conditions were too many. Tell me, if you have to do without one of these, which one would you remove first? And Confucius said, and I like this, give up arms. So we'll do without military protection. Zigong asked again, if you had to get rid of another one, which one would you give up? Confucius, in all seriousness, told him, give up food. We are willing not to eat. He continued, death has always been with us since the beginning of time, but when there is no trust, that's the most important one, the common people will have nothing to stand on. And that could be one of the sources of the chaos that is a part of American culture. Chaos between groups, in politics, in society, on the internet, etc. Not that I know where people are from on the internet, but so I guess like maybe, I don't know, maybe it's worldwide. The chaos is worldwide, or many places. But yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's frustration with how difficult and challenging it is for most of us just to live, just to live with security and relative comfort and safety. How much you have to work, how much those above you are asking you to work more and more and more, but you're not paid anymore. You just have to work more and more so you can prove yourself. But like, really, do you really need to do that? Especially in your work, if there's tons of people always leaving, like why are they always leaving, right? Why do we constantly have to hire new people? Maybe think about that, but maybe people don't really care. We'll just hire new people. To do without food will certainly lead to death, but from ancient times to this day, has anyone ever cheated death? So death is not the worst thing that can happen. The most terrible thing of all is the collapse and breakdown that follow when a country's citizens give up on their nation. On a material level, a happy life is no more than a series of goals to be reached. But sorry, I was just sad thinking about how poorly sometimes we treat each other. Sorry. Sometimes I'm reading and then my mind is somewhere else. Okay, on a material level, a happy life is no more than a series of goals to be reached. But true peace and stability come from within, from an acceptance of those that govern us, and this comes from faith. Oh, I just love that. I just love that. I have to, what color highlighter am I using? Oh, blue. Okay. Sorry, oh my gosh, okay. My nails are dry. I have to highlight that. I have to highlight so many things. That is just so on point, articulated so well. You, Dan, wherever you are. I love you. Okay. There's so many other things I want to highlight. Okay, but I won't do it now. Focus. This is Confucius's concept of government. He believed that the power of faith alone was sufficient to hold a nation together. I love this. I can't really stop, but I love it. In the 21st century, we say that it is no longer enough to use the simplistic standard of gross national product to assess the quality of the people's life in different countries. Yeah, absolutely. I love this. You must also look at gross national happiness. I think that the country of Bhutan does that, right? I've heard about that like years and years ago. In other words, to evaluate whether a country is truly rich and powerful, you should not just look at the speed and scale of its economic growth. You should look more at the feelings in the heart of each ordinary citizen. Do I feel safe? Am I happy? Do I truly identify with the life I lead? And that's interesting, like this focus on feelings. I think one of my questions that I'm going to ask my students tomorrow is what emphasis, to what extent does Confucius in the Analects like talk about feelings? Like feelings incorporated into the ritualistic process. So is that a part of his vision of self-cultivation? Let me know in the comments below if you think yes. Okay, at the end of the 1980s, China took part in an international survey which showed that at that time, the happiness of our citizens was only around 64%. That's interesting. In 1991, we took part in a survey again. The happiness index had risen, reaching around 73%. This came from an improvement in our standard of living, as well as all of the reforms that were carried out around then. But by the time we took part for a third time in 1996, the happiness index had fallen to 68%. This is a very puzzling business. It shows that even when a society is thriving materially and culturally, the people who enjoy the fruits of that society may nonetheless experience an extremely complex kind of spiritual bewilderment. I love that. That's really important. I think we can see that when, I mean, of course, like how much do we really understand the people of, you know, the other half by watching like very edited like reality shows about the rich and famous? I'm not sure, but it seems like when you watch maybe like documentaries on like heirs to great companies, there is this theme of spiritual bewilderment. Let us travel back in time 2,500 years and compare what the sages and wise men were like in this prosperous age. Confucius was very fond of his student called Yan Hui. On one occasion, he praised him. How admirable Hui is! Living in a mean dwelling on a bowl full of rice and a ladle full of water is a hardship most men would find intolerable. But Hui does not allow this to affect his joy. How admirable he is! Yan Hui's family was very poor. They never had enough to eat or new clothes to wear and lived in a grim, run-down little alley. For most people, a hard life like this would simply be unendurable. Yet, he could find happiness in what he had. Perhaps many people would say, that's just the way life is. We all have to live, rich or poor. What can be done about it? What is truly admirable about Jan is not that he could endure such rough living conditions, but his attitude to life. When everybody was sighing bitterly and complaining about how hard life is, Yan Hui's optimism never wavered. We see that only the truly enlightened can avoid becoming tied down by the material things in life and keep a calm, tranquil mindset from start to finish, indifferent to fame or personal gain. I think this is a really good characterization and focus on Confucius, just to know that Confucius, like his manner, his standard for himself and his character and his persona was steady and grounded, but gentle and considerate and kind and peaceful. So, and silent on maybe subjects that didn't matter or would take us into intellectual vanity. I think it's a really, like, that's a really good model for people, and maybe why Confucianism has like lasted for so long and been so influential for so long. Even, you know, though it has like wavered in and out, I guess, in like Chinese history. Of course, nobody wants to live a hard life, but equally, we cannot solve our spiritual problems through a dependence on more and more possessions. In modern China, our lives are visibly improving in a material sense, yet a great many people are growing more and more dissatisfied. Because we have a highly visible class of people who have suddenly become extremely wealthy, there is always something to make ordinary people feel that their lives contain unfairness. Actually, what we focus on can work in two ways. One is outward looking, infinitely broad, expanding our world. Another is inward looking, delving infinitely deep to explore the inner heart. We always spend too much time looking at the outside world and too little looking at our hearts and souls. I think that's true. Confucius can teach us the secret of happiness, which is how to find peace within. A student, Zhigong, once asked Confucius, poor without being obsequious, wealthy without being arrogant. What do you think of this saying? Imagine somebody who is very poor but doesn't grovel to the rich, or someone who is very rich and powerful but not haughty or arrogant. What do you think of that? Confucius told him this is pretty good, but it is still not enough. There is another higher state, poor yet delighting in the way, wealthy yet observant of the rights. The higher state requires that a person must not only accept poverty peaceably and not go crawling and begging for favors, but they must also be possessed of a calm, clear inner happiness, the kind of happiness that cannot be taken away by a life of poverty. Neither will power and riches make such a person haughty or self-indulgent. They will still be refined and courteous with a cheerful, contented mind. Such a person can both avoid being led astray by a life of wealth and plenty and can keep their self-respect and inner happiness. Such a person can truly be called a junzi. Okay, so this chapter is very long. Okay, we definitely cannot get finished with this today. I'm tired. So I'm gonna just stop there. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed this. I'm not sure there will be another video about this because I will need to move on to Taoism, but I will continue reading it now today. So I don't know, maybe in the future, let me know if you want another video, but at least it gives you a taste of this book if you want to pick it up and I think it's a good, I mean, obviously reading the Analects is like, I wonder if I have, this is the, well, I might have more translations, but this is the book I would recommend. It not only has the Analects, but it is for Chinese classics. So, and they're all really good. Like it also has the Tao Te Ching. It's translated by David Hinton, and I really, really like his translation. So I would definitely read the Analects, but if you want maybe even an introduction to Confucianism, knowing that it is, you know, going to be a part of like the most contemporary modern wave of Confucianism, I guess you can judge for yourself from hearing about this, whether you want to read this or not. All right, so I will see you later. Please send me good vibes that my class on Confucianism goes well. And yeah, I will see you next time reading, I don't know, probably the Tao Te Ching. So hope that you like the religious trend this semester. Bye.